After giving birth, my husband told his mistress, "That fat girl disgusts me. She's covered in cellulite." I pretended I didn't hear anything, and the next day I sold my $1.5 million house, leaving her only a note. The smell of breast milk still permeated her skin when she heard her husband say she disgusted him. Isabella was 33 years old, with a fresh scar on her stomach, eyes swollen from fatigue, and breasts cracked from breastfeeding. Just 48 hours earlier, she had given birth to her first child, Emiliano, a healthy 5-kilo baby boy, who was born after 18 hours of induced labor, 2 bags of IV fluids, and an animal-like scream that tore her soul apart. She had dreamed of that moment for months. She had imagined returning home with Esteban holding her hand, the room decorated with blue balloons, the smell of a new home. What she found was something else. Upon arriving at the entrance of the house, the same one they had bought 3 years earlier for $570,000, with the promise of starting a family, everything seemed the same. The perfectly trimmed yard, the hallway lights on, the noise of a television in the background. Isabella held Emiliano tightly, trembling, not from the cold, but from that animal instinct that sometimes warns, even when logic refuses to listen. She entered. The echo of her footsteps resonated on the tiles like an omen. No one came out to greet her. Not a kiss, not a "my love," not a "how are you?" The silence wasn't just silence, it was absence. It was emptiness. She climbed the stairs carefully, making sure the baby didn't wake up. And the lights in the master bedroom were on, and laughter could be heard. Female laughter. Laughter muffled by warm whispers. Isabella's heart began to pound in her throat. She approached. From the crack in the door, she saw her reflection in the dressing room mirror. On the other side, Esteban was lying in bed, shirtless, his cell phone propped up on a pillow in front of him. He was smiling, laughing, and playing with a wine bottle. On the screen, a completely naked woman, with a tanned body and blonde hair tied in a high ponytail, was teasing him with suggestive movements. The scene looked like something from an adult site, not a video call between 2 real lovers. "Has the cow already given birth?" the woman asked, laughing. Esteban shrugged. "Yeah, but you don't know what that fat girl is. She disgusts me. She's covered in cellulite. How awful. She doesn't do anything to me anymore." The woman burst out laughing. "You don't deserve a cow like that. Come with a real woman with curves from the gym, not from maternity." Isabella didn't scream. She didn't come banging. She didn't throw her cell phone against the wall. She just stared in silence. She felt something inside her split in two. It wasn't jealousy. It was humiliation. It was that feeling of being naked in front of a world that spits at you. And worst of all, with the baby in her arms. She didn't say a word. She turned around, quietly closed the door, and went downstairs with dry eyes. And she didn't cry. She couldn't. Sometimes the body protects itself by ceasing to feel. She went to the utility room. She left Emiliano asleep on a blanket and sat down in front of the closet. There, among old boxes and forgotten vacation suitcases, she looked for the house's purchase agreement, and the insurance papers, the deeds, the passports. Esteban didn't find out anything, nor did he ask any questions. That night, Isabella didn't sleep a wink. While Emiliano slept peacefully with his pink mouth open, she sat in the kitchen checking contacts, texting. She made calls, negotiated, sent photos of the documents, and by dawn, when light began to filter through the windows, she already had an appointment with a buyer. "Are you sure you want to sell now?" the real estate agent asked on the phone. "Yes, I want it sold today, not tomorrow. Half the price today, cash only. But ma'am, this house is worth much more. Does it have a buyer or not?" It did. At 5 p.m. that same day, a man arrived with a duffel bag and a contract in hand. Isabel nodded. The house was no longer hers. Esteban wasn't there. He didn't return all day. Maybe he was still enjoying their video call. Maybe he didn't care. Maybe he never cared. Isabella didn't tell him. She didn't leave him a note. She didn't text him. Nothing. She packed 2 backpacks, one with clothes for Emiliano, another with diapers, formula, and a couple of her own shirts. She withdrew everything left in their joint account from the bank, divided it into envelopes, took the money from the buyer, and tucked it away under her clothes. As night fell, she left. The house was silent. Only the ticking of the dining room clock could be heard, and the walls still smelled of her, of the love she had thought she had, of the dreams she had built with him. But now they also smelled rotten, of betrayal. She left without looking back. The taxi took her to the other side of the city, where the streets are dirt, the houses are made of unpainted blocks. Stray dogs sleep on the sidewalk, and the sound of the night isn't silence, but the sound of motorcycles, the laughter of barefoot children, and the sound of rags shaking out the dust. A woman was waiting for her in front of a humble 2-story house. Her skin was tanned by the sun, and her eyes were tired, but she had the most honest smile I'd seen in days. "You're the one, Isa." "Yes. Come in, my girl. There's room here for those who escape without shouting." Doña Matilda, the owner of the boarding house, led her to a room on the second floor. A cot, a table, an old fan, nothing more. But for Isabella it was enough. It was freedom. And as she placed her backpack on the floor, Emiliano woke up and cried. She picked him up, sat on the edge of the cot, and hugged him. And for the first time in 2 days, she cried. But they weren't tears of weakness. They were the blood of her soul flowing out in drops, the accumulated pain, the shame, the rage. Doña Matilde watched her silently from the doorway. "Did he hit you?" she asked quietly. "Ino insulted you to your face. He was unfaithful to you." Isabella nodded. "Then he hit you, only without hands." Matilde said no more. She closed the door softly and left her alone. Isabella slept cuddled up to Emiliano. She dreamed of Esteban's voice saying, "You're no good to me like this." She dreamed of the laughter of the woman on the screen, her own body bleeding. When she woke up, she wasn't the same. Something inside her had died, and in its place, another woman had been born. Not a stronger one, not a vengeful one, not a warrior. That would come later. That night, she simply stopped being herself, the one who trusted, the one who hoped, the one who believed love was enough. She was no longer Isabella the wife. She was just Isabella, and that hurt more than anything. The next morning arrived with bright sunshine, children running in the streets, street vendors and honking horns. Isabella came downstairs with Emiliano wrapped in a blanket. In the communal kitchen, a 5-year-old girl offered her a cookie. "Is he your son?" she asked. "Yes, he's cute. He looks like Angel." Isabella smiled for the first time. "And what's your name?" "Lucia." "I live here with my grandmother. My parents left. They said they were going to come back, but it's been 2 years. Are you leaving too?" Isabella bent down and looked into her eyes. "And no, I'm not going to leave." That was the first promise she made to herself and Emiliano, because even though they had broken her inside, there were still pieces left. And with them she would build a new life, one that didn't depend on someone wanting her, or having the perfect body, or forgiving the unforgivable. And so, with a steady gaze and a racing heart, Isabella began walking through the neighborhood, unaware that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. What she didn't yet know was that not everyone around her was what they seemed, and that the poison she'd been given wasn't gone. The neighborhood moved to the rhythm of broken horns, dogs fighting over scraps, and children running barefoot with toenails blackened by dirt. It was an ecosystem of chaos and survival, but also of resistance. No one asked too many questions here. Everyone had something to hide, and that was a comfort to Isabella. Doña Matilde's boarding house was on the corner of a dirt street, next to a butcher shop where cuts of meat hung in the open air. At the entrance, a rusty wheelchair served as a makeshift coat rack, and on the second floor, the windows had curtains made from old sheets. Emiliano slept wrapped in a blue blanket on a narrow bed, while Isabella watched him from a plastic chair. There was no air conditioning, no television, and no silence, but at least they were safe. The room smelled musty, a mixture of old cigarettes and reheated rice soup. Through the cracks in the window, a neighbor's off-key singing and the constant sound of the propeller fan spinning limply could be heard. Isabella didn't sleep more than 2 hours at a time. Emiliano had a fever at night, and although the community doctors told her it was normal, something inside her was unsettled. A fever that came and went, a gaze that sometimes vanished, a cry that sounded different. Doña Matilda, the woman who rented her the room, was an elderly woman with dry skin and a steely character. She was raising 3 grandchildren alone, whom her children had abandoned, and she kept an exact account of every rice dish, every piece of bread, every favor. But with Isabella, something in her way of looking at her was different. It wasn't compassion, it was recognition. She knew what it felt like to swallow tears with a closed throat. "I'm not going to ask you why you ran away, my daughter," she said to her one night while smoking in the hallway. "But if you have something rotten behind you, you'd better bury it well. We don't want any more ghosts here." Isabella nodded. There was no need to explain. Sometimes pain communicates itself without words. A few days later, she found a job cleaning houses in a nearby housing development. Doña Matilde knew a trustworthy woman who needed someone 3 times a week. Isabella accepted without asking the salary. What she earned would cover diapers, food, and the paracetamol that Emiliano's persistent fever could no longer cure. Every morning, she left at 6 a.m. with a backpack on her shoulder and half-swallowed hope. She left Emiliano with Matilda, who cared for him in exchange for a portion of her salary. The old woman wasn't kind, but she fed him, bathed him, and watched over him as if he were one of her own. And at the corner bakery, a young man with a hardened face and chapped hands tied the sacks of flour with a precise knot every morning. His name was Angel. He didn't speak to anyone, didn't say hello, didn't smile. But every time Isabella passed by the bakery, he looked at her, not with morbid curiosity or pity, but with attention, as if trying to understand what that woman was hiding behind those sad eyes. One morning, as Isabella hurried back because Emiliano hadn't wanted to drink any milk, she dropped her bag from the market. The tomatoes rolled onto the sidewalk. A woman shouted for her to be careful, and within seconds, Angel bent down and helped her pick everything up without saying a word. "Thank you," she murmured without looking at him directly. He handed her the bag without responding. Before she continued on her way, he muttered something in a deep voice. "And is the child sick?" Isabella stopped. "He's had a fever for days. It won't go down." Angel nodded slowly. "There's a woman who cures with herbs. She lives at the end of 10th Street. Everyone avoids her because they say she's a witch, but sometimes witches know more than doctors." Isabella squinted at him. "Do you trust her?" My sister was on the verge of death. She cured his infection with 3 plants and a leaf bath. No one else could." That night, Emiliano wept relentlessly. His cries were hoarse, with a desperate tone that cut to the core. Isabella took his temperature, 40 grams, and she had no more money to take him to the clinic, no insurance, no answers. He remembered what Angel had told him. At 9 p.m., with the baby wrapped in a blanket, she walked down 10th Street until she found a house without a doorbell, a wooden door with symbols carved with a knife. And she knocked, and an elderly voice asked her to come in. The woman was small, with braided white hair and hands covered in dark spots. Her eyes seemed to see beyond the obvious. She didn't ask anything. He took the child in his arms, smelled him, and gently undressed him. "This isn't just any fever," he said softly. "Someone is slowly making him sick. Something unseen, something intentionally given." Isabella felt a chill on her back. "What does it mean?" "And the body speaks. It's making us sick all by itself. There's poison in his environment, and I don't just mean what he eats. Is he in danger?" The woman nodded, her eyes on the baby. "Yes, but so are you. This child is a channel for your punishment, and someone wants to see you suffer through him." Isabella clenched her fists, and the image of Esteban appeared in her mind like a slap. "Can she help him?" "Yes, but you'll have to do exactly as I tell you. No hospitals, no chemicals, just nature and silence. Can you do it?" "Yes, I'll do anything." And for 3 days, she gave him bitter infusions, bathed him with herbs, and placed leaves on the soles of his feet. Emiliano stopped crying the 2nd night. His temperature dropped on the 3rd day. He smiled again on the 4th. Isabella felt relief, but also fear. What if it was true that someone was poisoning him? When he returned to the boarding house, Doña Matilde was waiting for him with a stern expression. "Where were you? I took him to a healer, and you're going to entrust him to a witch? I already did." Matilde snorted, but said nothing more, and she just crossed her arms and watched her. That week, tension began to rise. Someone left a note on her door. It wasn't signed. It just said, "Don't run, we'll find you." Isabella felt her world shrinking. She had no proof, but she knew who could be behind it. Esteban wasn't just unfaithful. He was controlling, possessive, capable of anything to avoid being seen as the bad guy. Paranoia began to seep into her thoughts. She heard footsteps where she didn't know where, shadows behind the curtains. She watched every face. She trusted no one, except Emiliano. But there was someone else watching her from the silence. Angel. He watched her from his world of flour and baked bread, without invading, without pressing. He just watched. One night, while she was washing clothes in the yard, he appeared with a flashlight. "I saw the note on your door." Isabella stared at him. "Was it you?" "No, but if they follow you, I should know how to defend myself." She frowned. "Defend myself." Angel took a small pepper spray from his pocket. "It's not much, but it can give you time to run, if they attack you." She took it without thanks. "Why are you helping me?" He didn't respond right away. He walked to the door. Before leaving, he paused because he knew what it was like to be alone and afraid. That phrase echoed in his mind all night. Who was that man? What story did he hold in his eyes? And the boarding house became his refuge and his prison. During the day, he worked. At night, he took care of Emiliano. Angel became a silent presence, sometimes leaving fruit at her door or giving her information about extra work. Matilda's grandchildren played with Emiliano, taught him words, and made him laugh. For the first time in weeks, Isabella felt something resembling home, but the poison was still there. One morning, while checking the baby's backpack, she found traces of a dark liquid at the bottom of the bottle. It smelled strange. It wasn't milk, it wasn't water, it was something else. She ran to Doña Matilda's room. "Who gave this to my son?" Matilda looked at her coldly. "Not me. No one gives him anything without your permission. I take care of him as if he were my own." This wasn't yesterday. The old woman became serious. "Are you implying I want to poison your son? I'm saying someone is." The tension was cut in the air. That night, Isabella slept with the kitchen knife under her pillow. The note, the strange liquid, the fever, everything fit together. And as she hugged Emiliano, her heart racing, she understood that the neighborhood was warm, yes, but it was also a labyrinth. And not everyone wanted to see her survive, because where no one knew her, she could also disappear without anyone asking. And that was the next danger. Isabella woke with a start. The clock read 3:30 in the morning, and Emiliano was burning with fever again. His body was trembling. His little face was red as if a fire were running through him. She tried to lower his temperature with a damp cloth as the healer had taught her. It didn't work. And the baby's breathing was labored, his eyes glassy. Something wasn't right. This fever wasn't the same. This was worse. Something inside him was breaking. She wrapped him in the cleanest blanket she had and ran down the stairs. She knocked desperately on Doña Matilda's door. No one answered. And she ran barefoot to the street, holding the child in her arms, looking for a taxi or someone who could help. The neighborhood was dark, with flickering lights and the echoes of a distant argument. No one stopped. No one looked. An old car pulled up in front of the bakery. Angel got out, covered in flour, after delivering a batch of bread that night. "Angel, I need help. Emiliano isn't breathing well. He has a fever, a high fever. He didn't ask any questions. He opened the passenger door and signaled for Emiliano to get in, and she drove quickly through the empty streets, dodging potholes and broken traffic lights, until she reached the nearest public hospital. Upon arrival, Isabella ran out with the boy in her arms. The guards barely looked at her inside. The emergency line felt like a punishment. Mothers crying, men with open wounds, children vomiting into plastic buckets. "Please, my son," Isabella cried. A nurse looked at the baby and frowned. "She has a hospital card." "No, but she has a high fever." "She's in bad shape. Please, do you have insurance?" No, but I can pay. It has to wait. Fill this out for me." The woman handed her a form. The baby began to convulse. Isabella screamed. The nurse took the child from her hands and rushed him inside without saying anything. Isabella tried to follow her, but a guard stopped her. "He can't come in. He's my son. I need to be with him." "Go to the unit. They'll tell you." For 3 hours, Isabella waited on a plastic chair without any news. When a doctor finally came out, he was in no hurry. He walked as if life belonged to no one. Emiliano Romero's mother. "Yes, it's me. He's fine. We stabilized him. He's dehydrated and has a severe respiratory infection. He's going to stay in the hospital. Someone will cover the costs. I'll do whatever it takes. Or he'll need special antibiotics, and that treatment isn't covered by the hospital. They're bought elsewhere. They cost more than most people can afford. Do you have family to help you?" Isabella swallowed. "And I'm not alone." The doctor looked at her for a second as if she were a lost cause. "Then get yourself a miracle, ma'am, because you're going to need one." Angel was waiting for her outside, sitting on the hood of the car. He looked at her with her eyes lowered, her shoulders slumped, and her hands shaking. "What did they say?" "If I don't pay, they won't save him. I'll lend you money." "It's not enough, Angel. It's a lot of money, more than I can scrape together cleaning houses or asking for favors." He remained silent. He knew he couldn't do more. That night, Isabella walked to the boarding house like a shadow. There was dirt on her feet, dried tears on her face, and guilt like a stone in her stomach. In her room, she opened her old cell phone and began recording. She didn't show her face, only her voice. "Today, I saw my son tremble in my arms. I saw him cough until he was out of breath. And when I asked for help, they asked me if I had insurance. They asked me if I could pay. They didn't ask my name. They didn't ask if I wanted to live. They asked me for money. And all because I trusted a man who said he loved me and then left me alone, humiliated, destroyed. They called me fat. They told me I was disgusting. And while I was giving birth, he was on a video call with another woman. This is my story, but it's also the story of many others. Because being a mother, being a woman, being poor, sometimes it's like having a seal of condemnation on your forehead." And she saved the video and uploaded it from an anonymous profile. She didn't expect anything. She just needed to scream. The next day, when she woke up, the video had more than 80,000 views. The comments kept coming. "I went through the same thing. He left me when I was 8 months pregnant. Stay strong, sister. He raped me, and the hospital denied me a pill because I didn't have papers. I'm crying with you. You're not alone." Isabella couldn't believe it. Her voice, her story, was touching others. Within hours, the video had surpassed 500,000 views. Independent media outlets echoed it. Influencers began to talk about the faceless woman who told the truth to thousands. And in an office across town, Esteban watched the video on his cell phone, a half-extinguished cigarette between his fingers. "Damn," he muttered, staring at the screen. Rebecca, the lover, sat in the kitchen, her eyes glued to the floor. Her belly was starting to show. She'd been avoiding Esteban for weeks. Since Isabella disappeared, something in him had changed. He was colder, more paranoid. She'd tried to break up with him, but he told her that if she left, he'd ruin her too. "Is she the one in the video?" Rebecca asked quietly. "It can't be. She's dead to me. She sold the house like a criminal. She disappeared with my son, and now he wants to make her a martyr." Rebecca approached. "Esteban, if that video reaches the authorities, they could review the house's paperwork. There are documents you signed on her behalf." He interrupted her with a bitter laugh. "Now you're going to lecture me on legality. If you talk, I'll drag you down with me." Rebecca didn't respond. She walked back to her room and locked it. At the boarding house, Isabella received an anonymous call. "We know who you are." She hung up immediately. Another message came in. "Give the child back or we'll bury him with you." She went straight to the hospital. Emiliano was still under observation, but his condition was critical. The doctor explained that the medication she needed could be obtained at a specific pharmacy, but it was expensive. Isabella left the hospital without any direction, walked to a park, sat on a bench, and began to cry. A boy approached and offered her a candy. "My grandmother says to cry lightly." She looked at him tenderly. The boy ran back to his family. Isabella opened her cell phone and recorded another video, this time without voice, just images. Emiliano's hands holding an IV, the hospital's cold room, the Syncupo sign, and at the end, a text. If something happens to me, let the world know it was because I kept quiet, because I ran away, that today they punish my son, and that the system kills more than any disease. And in less than 24 hours, the video surpassed 1 million views. News networks began to investigate. A reporter contacted the account. "We want to hear your story. Could you do an interview?" Isabella hesitated. "Only if my face remains hidden." Accepted. That same night, her testimony was broadcast on television. A distorted voice, a pixelated face, but each word struck a chord with thousands. The story exploded on social media, becoming a trending topic. Feminist groups began searching for her. Associations offered help. Volunteer doctors came to the hospital. Esteban went into crisis. An anonymous email was sent to the prosecutor's office. Copies of documents were forged from the sale of the house. His name appeared in suspicious transactions. The house Isabella sold was already under investigation for money laundering. Esteban smashed his cell phone against the wall. "He's ruining my life." Rebecca looked at him from the doorway without saying a word. The baby, growing in her womb, kicked for the first time, and for a second she hesitated whether to stay or escape before it was too late. At the hospital, the doctor told Isabella that Emiliano needed to be transferred to a private clinic for full treatment. She closed her eyes. There was hope. And the system had pushed her into the abyss, but her cry had been so loud that thousands heard it. Angel appeared at the hospital with a bag of food and a faint smile. "Your video is everywhere. Are you okay?" She looked at him with moist eyes. "No, but I'm alive. And my son, too." He sat down next to her. He didn't say anything else. For hours, no one spoke. And for the first time in weeks, Isabella didn't feel fear. She felt rage, yes, and a thirst for justice that was only just beginning to awaken because the price of silence had been too high, and she was no longer willing to pay it. The sound of the heart monitor echoed in the room with the irregular rhythm of a threat. Emiliano slept on the stretcher surrounded by wires, his skin pale and his lips chapped. His small body seemed even more fragile inside the ill-fitting green gown. Isabel sat beside him with her hands clasped and knuckles tense, staring at the ceiling without seeing anything. A young doctor entered the room with a folder in his hand and a restrained expression. "Mrs. Romero, we need to talk to you," he said bluntly. Isabella sat up without taking her eyes off her son. What did they find? The doctor hesitated, and he turned the pages slowly, as if he wanted to avoid the words already written. "We performed more advanced studies because Emiliano's clinical picture didn't match a common infection. At first we thought it was a poorly treated respiratory virus. But what? Say what you have to say." "We found traces of a substance in her blood. It's not a medication, it's a combination of chemicals that shouldn't be in a baby's body. The most worrying thing is that it's been entering her body little by little. Repeated microdoses." Isabella felt a dizziness that emptied her stomach. "Is he telling you he was poisoned?" The doctor nodded gravely. "We have no direct evidence of how it entered his body. But this isn't a natural disease. Someone at some point has been giving him this substance orally, perhaps in milk, water, or food. And it's been on a regular basis." Isabella was speechless. Her face hardened, but her eyes filled with tears. "He's in danger. He's stable for now, but if we don't completely stop the source, it could have neurological consequences or worse." The word worse stuck like a thorn. Isabella gritted her teeth. "Can you tell me what substance it is?" "An ethylene glycol-based compound. They use it in antifreeze and industrial detergents. In small doses, it's imperceptible, but in sustained doses, it's lethal." Isabella lowered her head and brought her hands to her face, and her fingers were trembling. Her whole body, her world. Someone wanted to kill her son. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't an illness. It was intentional, and that changed everything. She left the hospital with firm steps. She didn't cry. As she walked to the park where she usually cleared her head and sat on her usual bench, she turned on her cell phone. She reread the messages she'd received days earlier. "Give the child back or we'll bury him with you. We know who you are. Don't run." Until now she had lived in fear, but this time, fear transformed into fury. A silent fury, one that gathers behind the teeth and doesn't scream. It acts. She returned to the boarding house that night like a wounded animal, but with the look of someone who has decided to attack. Doña Matilda was waiting for her at the entrance. "How is the poisoned child?" she answered without emotion. Matilde opened her eyes. "What are you saying? They've been poisoning him with microdoses for a while now. It's not a fever, it's poison." Matilde took a step back. "You're insinuating yourself. I'm telling you someone wants him dead, and I'm determined to find out who." She entered the room, locked the door, and searched every object. She threw her backpack on the floor, overturned the crib, emptied the laundry basket, looking for something, anything. And the next morning she went to the pharmacy where she usually bought the formula. She asked about the batches. She demanded to see the expiration dates. Everything was in order. She walked to the bakery. Angel was kneading dough with his bare, flour-covered forearms. "I need your help," she said without saying hello. Angel wiped her hands with a rag. "What's going on? The baby is being poisoned. I was told something toxic has been entering her body for weeks. Someone is doing it, and I need to know who." He wasn't surprised. He lowered his gaze. "And you suspect someone? Everyone? Even you?" Tension hung in the air like a thick cloud. Angel stared at her. There was no anger on his face, only a deep sadness. "I understand," he said. "You trust no one. That's the way it has to be." "Could you watch the boarding house while I'm gone?" "Yes, but if anyone's following you, give me names. I'm willing to help you, but I need to know who we're fighting against." "I don't know yet," she replied, "but I will soon." Isabella began writing in a notebook the names of all the people who had had direct contact with Emiliano in recent weeks. Matilde, the grandchildren, the lady who cleaned the house, the healer, Angel, even herself. She didn't rule anyone out. That night, she checked the bottles again, washed them one by one, opened the new formula she'd bought, and smelled it. There was something strange about it, a faint metallic smell like rust. She went to the hospital with the can. She gave it to the doctor. "Can you test this?" "We'll try." While she was waiting for the results, she received a message from an unknown number. It wasn't a threat, just an address. An upscale neighborhood north of the city. The message read, "She's also paying the price." Isabella didn't understand who or why. Upon arriving at the indicated location, she recognized the building. She had visited it before when she still lived with Esteban. It was one of his businesses. She went up to the 15th floor and knocked on the door. No one answered. As she was about to leave, a voice stopped her from the hallway. Isabella turned around. Rebecca was standing there, barefoot, with dirty hair and a belly she could no longer hide. "What are you doing here?" Isabella asked, her jaw clenched. "Someone sent you the message, right?" "Yes. Why?" Rebecca looked down. She was pale. "I've received threats, too." "I can't go out. I can't talk to anyone. I've been locked up for weeks." Esteban checks my phone, disconnected me from the internet, told me that if I betray him, he'll take it away. "The baby." "Yes, I'm pregnant." Isabella felt nauseous. Not because of Rebecca, but because of history repeating itself, because of the cycle of violence that fueled new victims. "Why did you call me?" "Because I know your son is sick, and I was poisoned too. He gave me some pills. He said they were vitamins. I lost a pregnancy before this one. I didn't know why. Until now." Isabella approached slowly. "Are you saying Esteban tried to kill you too?" Rebecca nodded. "He wants to control everything. If you're not perfect, if you don't obey, he nullifies or eliminates you." "And why are you still with him?" "Because if I leave, he'll kill me." Isabella looked at her. In that instant, she understood. The enemy was bigger than she thought. Esteban wasn't just a cruel man. He was a functioning psychopath, one who knew how to hide his true colors beneath a suit and a charming smile. She returned to the boarding house with a certainty in her chest. It wasn't paranoia, it was real. Esteban was behind it all, and now she was on his list, too. That night, while writing in her notebook, she heard a knock on the window. She got up. Nothing. She sat back down. Another knock sounded. A hooded man was running through the bushes. She screamed. Doña Matilde came out of her room with a knife in her hand. Angel came down the stairs in seconds. "What happened?" "Someone was outside. They're watching us." Angel went out to the street. He didn't find anyone, but on the gate there was a mark made with chalk, an inverted red cross. "This is a sign," he said, to indicate the house. "Who does that?" "Those who want to get in." That morning, Isabella didn't close her eyes. Angel stayed in the living room, holding an old bat. At 5 a.m., they heard the door creak. 2 hooded men tried to enter. Angel confronted them without hesitation. He hit the first one in the leg, the second ran. Matilda shouted from the stairs. Isabella hugged Emiliano, hiding in the kitchen. After a brief struggle, the intruders escaped. Angel was left breathing heavily, his forehead bleeding. "Do you want the child?" he gasped. "You won't have him. Never," Isabella replied, her eyes blazing, because this time she wasn't just going to survive, this time she was going to fight, and no one could imagine how far she was willing to go. Isabella's knuckles were cracked from clenching her fists at night. Her eyes were tired from reading documents she didn't fully understand, and a suppressed rage that was beginning to rot her faith. The attempted kidnapping was the final straw. There were no more warnings. It was war. And the neighborhood remained the same on the outside. Children playing in the trash, music pouring from the houses as if there were no rules, and skinny dogs with hungry eyes. But for her, everything had changed, and she was no longer a woman on the run. She was a mother hunting down the one who tried to destroy her. That morning, after dropping Emiliano off at the hospital, she returned to the boarding house and found Angel sitting in the courtyard sharpening a knife with a stone. And the scene stopped her for a moment. He didn't seem nervous, just focused. "I need to talk to you," she said firmly. He didn't look up. "Tell me, did you know who Rebecca was before all this happened?" Angel put the knife aside. "Yes. Since when?" "For years. I knew her before you married Esteban. It was in a different neighborhood. She worked at a gym. She was a friend of my younger sister. Why didn't you tell me before?" He looked up without excuses because I thought it didn't matter, that it wasn't relevant. And it was. It was when I found out who your husband was. Isabella crossed her arms. She continues talking. "My sister was 16. She was very pretty. Rebecca introduced her to Esteban at a private party. I wasn't there. He got her drunk and took her to a room. Nothing happened because I arrived in time. I beat him out. We ended up at the police station. He had lawyers. I had a record. I ended up in jail for assault. He got off clean. My sister tried to take her life twice. She hasn't spoken since." The air became thick. Isabella felt something in her chest tighten. "And you're still helping me?" "Yes, because you're not him. Because your son doesn't deserve to pay for what his father did, and because I owe justice, even if it's not the courts." She didn't know what to say. She looked at him for a few seconds. There was something in Angel's eyes that hurt, a past without respite. As night fell, local television was broadcasting a special report. Esteban had held a press conference in his offices. Surrounded by cameras and journalists, he was dressed in a light gray suit with his hair perfectly combed. His face was stern, but his speech was carefully rehearsed. "I want to publicly denounce the disappearance of my son, Emiliano Romero," he said, looking directly into the camera. His mother, Isabella, fled with him months ago. She has suffered from mental illness since birth. She has refused treatment. I loved her. But I cannot remain silent while my son is in the hands of someone unstable. I implore the authorities to intervene. Isabella threw the glass of water against the wall. The plastic bounced. Water spilled onto the floor. "Unbalanced," she whispered. Mathilde entered the room, dragging her slippers. "Did you see what he said?" "Yes," she replied, her gaze glued to the screen. Mathilde sat down in the wooden chair with difficulty. The light from the television illuminated her wrinkled face. "Isabella, what? I have to tell you something, and it's going to cost me my life." She turned sharply. "What?" "I've known Esteban since before you were born." The sentence fell like a hammer. Isabella approached slowly. "What are you saying?" Mathilde swallowed. Her hands were shaking. "His mother, Clara, was my best friend when we were kids. We were both raised in the countryside. Clara fell in love with a wealthy married man who owned a land. He left her pregnant. When his wife found out, she kicked her out of town. I gave her shelter. She stayed here in this same house for months. Esteban was born in the back room. He was a beautiful baby. Clara begged me to raise him with her, but we couldn't. There was no money. She ended up giving him up to his biological father in exchange for a payment. She never saw him again, and I was left with the secret. Isabella couldn't breathe. You're telling me Esteban is your friend's son and grew up here? No, he never came back. They raised him like he was a bastard who had to be perfect to deserve anything. That's why he is the way he is. That's why he doesn't know how to love. Because he was born as punishment. Isabella stepped back, her hands on her head. That makes me his. Matilda nodded. You now live where their story began. He's part of this house, even if he doesn't know it. The irony hit her hard. She had fled hell only to hide within the same hell disguised as a refuge. That night, Rebecca appeared at the boarding house, her face covered by a scarf. She was trembling. Isabella opened the door in annoyance. What do you want? Rebecca was crying. She kicked me out. She told me she didn't want any more disturbances, that you had ruined her life, that if I reported it she would make me disappear. Isabella felt no compassion. And now you come asking me for help. I'm not here for me. I'm here for the baby. It's not his fault. Like Emiliano, Isabella hesitated, but opened the door, showed her a chair, and gave her a glass of water. Rebecca was trembling. He has false documents. He has accounts in tax havens. He hid papers from the sale of the house. He made you sign things when you were pregnant. They're in your name. Isabella stood up. What? Yes. You signed a general power of attorney. You thought it was a medical permit. He used it to launder money. They're investigating you too, not just him. Isabella felt the walls close in, the air draining from her. Why are you telling me this now? Because he used me, lied to me, manipulated me just like he did you. And why? I can't keep silent any longer. The next day, Isabella visited a lawyer who offered free help to women experiencing violence. As she brought all the documents she could find, the deeds, the contract, the hospital copies, the videos, everything, the lawyer, a woman with a deep voice and steady hands, reviewed the papers carefully. You're implicated without knowing it, but if you cooperate with the authorities and testify, you can get away with it, and he'll come down. And if he takes revenge, he's already doing so. The difference is that you now have proof. He doesn't know that you also know. Isabella returned home with a steely determination. She was ready to confront him in public, to expose him. That same night, she asked Angel for help in obtaining a hidden camera. I'm going to pay him a visit, she said, and I want to record it. Are you sure? And more than ever. It's time to scare him back. They looked at each other, and for the first time, Angel smiled. The plan was in motion. Hell was waiting for her, and she was going to enter it without asking permission, because sometimes to survive, you have to learn to dance among the flames. And this time, Isabella wasn't going to go up in flames. She was going to burn everything down. And the plan was drawn up silently, between whispers in the boarding house kitchen and notes hidden under the tablecloth. Isabella stopped trembling. She was no longer the woman hiding under old blankets or the mother begging for antibiotics. Now she was a strategist. And she had a purpose and a burning fire in her eyes. She didn't want revenge for herself. She wanted justice, not just for herself, but for all those who had remained silent. For her sister, dead in life. For Rebecca, whose guilt was embedded in her body. For her own son, who had been poisoned in silence. The camera arrived in a package with no return address. Angel was in charge of programming it. Hidden microphone, motion sensor, long-lasting battery. Rebecca, her face haggard and lips chapped from painkillers, also had one hidden in her bra. He didn't trust her, but he knew her presence was necessary to close the loop. Are you sure you can face him? Angel asked her the night before. I pretended to be a happy woman for years. I'll pretend to be sorry for one more night, she replied without flinching. She walked into Esteban's house on a Monday, just at dusk, wearing the same clothes she'd worn the day she gave birth, a white blouse, worn jeans, and tied-back hair, and he greeted her in the door with a mixture of surprise and disdain. What do you want now? Isn't it enough that you've destroyed my image? She lowered her gaze, acting like she was doing it. I have nowhere else to go. Rebecca left. Emiliano is hospitalized again. I'm exhausted. Esteban watched her silently. Then he stepped aside. "Come in." The house smelled of disinfectant and cheap wine. Nothing remained of the home they had built. The photos were gone. The curtains were new. Her wedding portrait had been replaced by an abstract painting that looked like a frozen scream. "Will you be sleeping in the guest room?" he said without looking at her. "And I don't want any trouble." She nodded. She spent the first few hours exploring the place under the guise of cleaning. He placed the camera on the lamp in the studio, the microphone on the vase in the living room. Everything was ready. The next morning, she pretended to have woken up with a headache. He offered her a coffee. She accepted it, knowing she shouldn't drink it. "Do you regret what you did?" Esteban asked her as she pretended to read an old magazine. "Yes, I shouldn't have run away or posted those videos. You ruined my name, Isabella. The company is under investigation. I lost investors. I almost got arrested because of your hysteria. I just wanted to save Emiliano." He laughed bitterly. "You hurt that child more than I did. He was born weak because you filled him with your fears, because you didn't know how to be a mother." She gripped the edge of the table. "Why did you sign documents in my name?" Esteban approached slowly with a crooked smile. "Because you were useful. Because in your naivete I found the perfect cover. And because while you were crying, I was building something real with Rebecca. With anyone. She was just another tool like you." Rage surged through her like a wave, but she contained it. "And Emiliano is also a tool." Esteban looked at her coldly. "He's a stain. You should never have had him." The sentence hung in the air. That night, Rebecca arrived, her face covered and her voice trembling. She entered the house like a shadow. Isabella gestured for her to speak. The camera was already recording. "I have to confess something," Rebecca said, her voice breaking. "I was the one who started poisoning Emiliano. I was filled with jealousy. I thought if I weakened you, he'd love me more. I never thought it would go this far." Esteban looked at her with contempt. "And now you're crying after what you did. I can't take it anymore. I don't sleep. I don't eat. I'm not a mother yet, and I'm already afraid of being a murderer." Isabella turned to him. "Did you know what she was doing?" Esteban crossed his arms, and she acted on her own. "I just wanted you to disappear, to give me my life back. And if that meant watching you fall, then I did enjoy it. I loved you, Esteban. I loved you so much that I forgot to love myself." "That was your mistake," he replied without a shred of remorse. Isabella took her cell phone out of her pocket and showed the screen. "This whole thing is live." He froze. "What did you say? Are you being watched by hundreds, maybe thousands? The microphone has been on since I walked in. The camera, too. This house is now a courthouse." Esteban ran toward her, but Angel came in from the kitchen with a metal bar in his hand. "One more step," he said firmly. Within seconds, the police arrived. They had been waiting for the transmission signal. Rebecca screamed. Esteban struggled. Isabella stood alone in the center of the room, her body shaking and her eyes brimming with tears. "I don't want to see you in jail because you hate me. And I want to see you in jail because the truth is finally out." The officers handcuffed him. "This is all illegal. It's a setup." "She's crazy," Esteban shouted, but no one was listening anymore. The video was shared on all social media. National media covered the news. A mother victim of violence exposes her attacker with hidden cameras. Shocking live confession. Rebecca's testimony shakes the internet. The face of power, Esteban Romero, a businessman accused of abuse, fraud, and attempted murder. Isabella returned to the hospital. As she ran through the halls until she reached Emiliano's room, the nurse came out to meet her. "Are you the mother?" "Yes." "What happened?" "And the child has relapsed." Isabella entered. Her son was pale and breathing with difficulty. His fever had returned. "Please don't go." "No, not now," she whispered, taking his hand. The monitor beeped. The doctors rushed in. They asked him to leave. He waited in the hallway with his fingers intertwined. Rebecca arrived minutes later in a wheelchair, escorted by an officer. "I came to ask for your forgiveness," she said, her eyes red. "I don't need your words anymore. I just want my son to live." After an hour, a doctor came out saying he was stabilized, but he needs constant monitoring. The after effects are appearing on a neurological level. We don't know what long-term effects there will be." Isabella collapsed. She cried without screaming. She cried without asking for anything. Angel sat down next to her in silence. "He's not alone," he finally said. "Neither am I. And that's saying something." Justice had begun, but the price was still too high. Isabella spent the next few days inside the hospital without looking at the clock, without counting the hours. Everything was Emiliano. Every beep from the monitor, every forced inhalation, every blink. And she lived between the certainty of having won and the fear that victory would come too late. Justice had knocked on Esteban's door and dragged him away in handcuffs and with cameras. But his son was still stuck between life and the fog. And deep in his chest, the question continued to sting like a splinter. Was it worth it? The doctors were clear. The treatment had saved Emiliano, but his body was scarred. And the poison, although eliminated, had left traces. Mild coordination problems, a possible impairment of peripheral vision, and brief episodes of disconnection. Maybe she would get better, maybe not. No one knew for sure. Rebecca, for her part, did not return to the hospital. Days later, Isabella received the news. She had given birth in a public hospital. A baby boy was born prematurely and underweight, and Rebecca couldn't hold him. He died of bleeding after birth. And no family members signed the papers, just an envelope with his name on it, handed to a nurse before entering the room. Inside the envelope was a letter. "Isabella, I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I hurt the only thing that gave you meaning. And I did it out of cowardice, to compete for the love of someone who never knew how to love. But that child inside me is mine, not his. He made me believe it for months. He manipulated me into doubting my body, but I know it's not his, it's mine. Take care of it. Give it to someone who won't repeat our mistakes. He didn't ask to be born among garbage, to live among flowers." Isabella read the letter silently. She cried a little, not for Rebecca, but for the emptiness left behind by all the broken women. And how many like her, how many like Rebecca, get lost every day and leave no letters? They just disappear. Angel arrived 2 hours later. He was carrying the baby wrapped in a white blanket. "He doesn't have a name," she said, lowering her voice. "The hospital needs someone to sign for him." "I want to do it." She looked at him. "Are you sure? I'm not his father, but I don't want him to grow up believing no one wanted him. I want to raise him. Not with pity, with love. And if the system takes him away from you, I'll fight it legally. Rebecca left your name as a contact, and you can authorize it. Let me know if you're willing." Isabella didn't respond immediately. She looked at the sleeping baby, oblivious to everything, with wrinkled skin and slow breathing. Then she looked at Angel, the man who had arrived without promises, without needing to seduce her, only with silence and actions. And she thought that not all heroes wear capes. Some just carry children and names in their arms. "Hey, do it," he finally said. "I'll sign." 2 weeks later, Esteban was convicted of fraud, document forgery, money laundering, attempted aggravated homicide, and sustained psychological violence. The sentence was 24 years with no reduction. The news went viral across the country. And the video of his live confession had already racked up more than 9 million views. Social media dubbed him the face of unpunished narcissism. Isabella didn't attend the trial. She didn't want to see him again. All she cared about was that he never again had power over anyone. Emiliano was discharged with strict medical recommendations, weekly physical therapy, and neurological checkups every 3 months. Controlled feeding, but there was something no one could explain. He smiled a lot, as if, despite everything, he had been born with the light of someone who chooses to shine even in the darkness. When Isabella held him, he touched her face. Sometimes he babbled sounds that resembled laughter. And that was enough, because that laugh, that tiny gesture, reminded her that not everything was broken. Isabella's story was requested by media outlets, foundations, and universities. They wanted her testimony, not because of Morvo, but because her voice had resonated like an echo of many others. And she accepted. The first talk was at a high school in front of 15 and 16-year-old girls. "And I didn't come here to tell you a sad story," she began in a firm voice. "I came to tell you that if anyone ever tells you you're crazy, fat, ugly, or worthless, it's not true. If anyone makes you doubt your worth, then that someone is trying to dim your light. And you came into the world to shine, not to beg for love." The teenagers listened in silence. Some cried, others recorded, but they all took something away. Because seeing a broken woman who learned to rebuild herself is more inspiring than any theory. The lectures continued. Public libraries, community halls, online platforms. Isabella didn't charge. She did it out of conviction. For every woman who messaged her saying, "I went through that too." For every mother who showed her a photo of her missing daughter. For every silenced voice that now found a megaphone in her. One night, Angel invited her to go for a walk in the park with Emiliano and the baby, whom he had named Nicolas. They didn't talk much. They walked, watched, breathed. "Have you ever wondered what would have happened if you had never heard that video call?" he asked her, occasionally looking up at the sky. But it doesn't matter now, because if it hadn't been that day, it would have been another. The pain doesn't escape, it just changes form. And now, what do you want? I want to live without fear for myself, for my son, for everyone, and love. Or I'm learning, but first for myself. They stopped in front of the swing. Emiliano laughed as a little girl gently pushed him. Nicolas slept in Angel's arms. Isabella sat on a bench, took out her cell phone and recorded a video. The last one, the camera pointed at the park at dusk, at the wind rustling the trees. Her voice sounded clear, calm, and firm. "I thought losing everything was the end, and I thought I wouldn't survive, that the pain would stay with me forever. But I discovered something no one had ever taught me. Sometimes life is rebuilt from the pieces no one wanted, from the ruins others scorned. And there, right there, true freedom is born." He stopped recording, and he looked at his son, at Nicolas, at Angel, and breathed for the first time, without feeling the need to explain, defend, or justify himself. He didn't need more because his life wasn't a story of victims, it was a story of rebirth. And that was just the beginning. What did you think of this story? Many people are experiencing similar situations. We hope Isabel Rivas's voice lives on in your heart as well. If this story touched you, share it. Be part of the change. Tell us in the comments what you would have done in a similar situation. Where are you watching from? We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Every gesture you make inspires us to continue creating profound and real stories every day. And don't leave yet, our next powerful story is about to appear on your screen. And you can click on the links you see right now. They're part of an exclusive selection of captivating stories, designed especially for you. Thanks for joining us. See you in the next video.